Welcome back, nighttime wanderers. My name is Silas, and I'm a storyteller here at Slumberlight Tales. I'm very glad that you found your way here tonight, to this little corner of the evening. Tonight, I've brought you a walk through an old forest, a meeting with a kind, mysterious wizard, and a house that remembers something you once left behind. It's a quiet sort of adventure. Nothing to solve, nothing to chase, just a path to follow, a door to step through, and a small, forgotten treasure waiting at the end. If you like, let the room be a little dim. Settle under your blankets and let the day stay where it is. This part belongs to you. Our story begins on a path through the forest that had not been here yesterday. At least, that is how it feels as you step from the last line of ordinary trees and find a narrow track waiting for you, pressed into the moss as if careful feet have passed this way and never made a sound. Evening lies in long bands between the trunks. The air is cool and still, touched with damp bark and fern. Somewhere far off, water moves, a slow, hidden sound. You are not sure when you left the familiar trail. One moment, there was a signpost and a bench. The next, there was only this quiet track and the sense that if you turn back now, you might miss something that has been waiting a very long time. So you do not turn back. You let the path lead you. It curves gently between the trunks, never too steep, never too narrow. Patches of moss glow faint green in the dimness. Here and there, a cluster of tiny mushrooms has pushed up from the soil, their caps round and smooth, pale as lantern glass. When your footsteps pass nearby, they shiver almost imperceptibly, as if feeling the faint disturbance in the air. A little further on, you notice the first glimmer. At first, you think it is a trick of the light, a reflection caught on the edge of your vision. Then, you see a small point of brightness hanging just above the ground, as if a star had slipped and become stuck on a root. It bobs very slightly, drifting in place, no larger than a firefly and far steadier. You slow. The point of light drifts ahead, hovering just to one side of the path. A second joins it, rising softly from the moss. Then a third, a little higher. In a matter of moments, a whole ribbon of such lights appears, threading a way between the trees like a strand of floating beads. You are still watching them when you realize that you are no longer alone. A man stands a short distance ahead, where the path bends towards a darker stand of firs. He is of ordinary height, his figure wrapped in a long, dark robe that falls in simple lines to his boots. His head is bare and completely bald, the curve of his skull catching the last of the evening light. A long white beard flows from his chin to his chest, neatly kept, the ends just brushing the fabric of his robe. There is a kindliness in his face that does not depend on his smile, the fine lines at the corner of his eyes, the steady, measuring gaze that rests on you without haste or judgment. Something in the set of his shoulders, in the way he folds his hands before him, suggests long practice in waiting for people to arrive exactly when they are meant to. He looks as though he has known you will come. "You take the left-hand path," he says, his voice mild and deep, as if commenting on the weather. "Good. The others wander in circles on nights like this." He lifts one hand, palm outward. The floating lights that have gathered along the path stir as if hearing a call. They rise a little higher, forming a loose arch between the trees, then drift forward in a slow, unhurried stream. The man nods toward them. "Come along," he says. "The forest is gentler when it knows where you are going." There is no question of refusing. The path seems to open around his words, widening very slightly, the undergrowth drawing back just enough to welcome two sets of footsteps instead of one. You walk toward him, and as you draw close, you can see the faint shimmer of something more than light within the small glowing spheres, the suggestion of wings or leaves or tiny hands pressed against the inner surface. Whatever they are, they keep a respectful distance, never brushing your skin, never flaring too bright. When you reach the man's side, he turns without ceremony and begins to walk. He does not ask who you are or how you have arrived. He does not explain himself. He simply keeps his pace steady, the hem of his robe whispering against the path, his hands clasped behind his back. The little lights move ahead of him in a slow procession, outlining each bend before you reach it, hovering kindly over stones and exposed roots. "Old trees," he remarks quietly once, as your shoulders brush the rough bark of a trunk that must have been growing for 100 years before you were born. They lean toward each other when the wind comes. "Best to let them talk," he continues. The forest deepens around you. The canopy grows thicker. The spaces between trunks fill with soft shadow, threaded through with the faint glow of the guiding lights. Somewhere above, a bird calls once and falls silent again. The smell of the air changes as you go on, picking up a cool mineral edge, as if there is water nearby, or rock that has not seen sunlight in a very long time. The man lifts his hand again. This time, instead of beckoning the small sprites, he traces a slow curve in the air. Pale lines of light follow the movement of his fingers, hanging where he leaves them, sketching a delicate arc in front of you, like the trail of a sparkler in the dark. He draws another, and another, until a doorway-shaped outline hangs between the trees ahead. gently shining. As you pass through it, the sound in the forest shifts. Distant water grows clearer, no longer muffled, but present. A steady trickle somewhere off to your right. You glimpse it a moment later, a narrow stream slipping between mossy stones, its surface catching the reflections of the floating lights and breaking them into slivers. One of the small spirits, if that is what they are, descends toward the stream, touching its surface with a soundless kiss. Rings of brightness spread outward from the point of contact, running along the water's surface until they vanish around a bend. The man watches this with a satisfied air, as though a small but important task has just been completed. They like to be included, he says. Left to themselves, they wander. Given a path, they shine as they are meant to. He glances at you, the corner of his mouth tilting in the faintest suggestion of a smile, as if the remark contains more than it says. But he does not add anything, and you do not ask. You simply walk on. The forest floor rises and falls in shallow waves. Ferns brush your ankles where the path dips. Dry leaves whisper underfoot where it climbs. The guiding lights brighten when the shadows thicken and dim again when the sky opens above. Once, as you pass beneath a pair of leaning oaks, the man flicks 2 fingers toward the ground. A soft bar of light appears at the base of each trunk, stretching across the path. The moment you step over it, the air prickles, then eases, and behind you, something large turns aside in the dark. Shortcut, he says briefly. The sky above the canopy darkens. The first stars appear between the branches. The small lights that have been accompanying you thin as you go deeper, drifting away into the undergrowth one by one, until only a handful remain. The man touches the air once more. At his gesture, a new light blossoms in his palm, larger than the others, steady and clear, the color of a candle flame seen through frosted glass. It hovers just above his skin, casting a calm circle of illumination around your feet and the path ahead. He closes his fingers until only a sliver of brightness escapes between them. The flame does not go out. Instead it stretches, thinning and lengthening, unspooling like fine thread. In a moment, it becomes a narrow band of light, running ahead of you along the path, marking its curves and dips as far as you can see. Where the band touches stones, it softens their edges. Where it crosses roots, they seem to sink a little into the earth, leaving the way smooth. That will hold, he says quietly. The forest is in a listening mood tonight. The air grows cooler as you walk. Your breath mists faintly before you. Somewhere far off, an owl calls. Its note deep and steady. The trees begin to thin, the trunks standing wider apart. Through the gaps between them, you see hints of something beyond, a wider darkness, a flat line where the rising land seems to level out. At last, the path rises one final time and brings you to the edge of the forest. And here, the world opens. In front of you lies a broad clearing, ringed with low stone walls. Beyond the walls, the land slopes away into the darkness, the distant line of hills just visible against the starry sky. At the center of the clearing, on a small rise of its own, stands a single house. It is larger than a cottage and smaller than a manor, built of plain stone with a steep dark roof. Tall windows glow with a steady light from within. Smoke climbs from a chimney at one end. A path of flat flagstones runs from the forest edge to the front steps, bordered by beds of herbs and low shrubs. Even in the dimness, you can see the shapes of their leaves. A faint trace of their scent reaches you where you stand. The man beside you, wizard, for there is really no other word that fits, rests his hand lightly on the top of the low stone wall that separates the clearing from the forest. Home, he says simply. He steps over the wall with the ease of long practice. The band of light that has been guiding you along the path loosens and flows ahead of him, spreading out over the flagstones, tracing their edges in a gentle glow. Where it touches the herbs, their leaves give a brief answering flicker, as if recognizing an old friend. You follow him along the path to the steps. Up close, the door looks solid and reassuring, its dark wood polished by years of use. A brass knocker in the shape of an open eye rests at its center, the metal dulled by time. The wizard does not use it. He simply sets his palm against the wood instead, fingers splayed, beard shifting slightly as he inclines his head. Back, he murmurs, as if speaking to the house itself. The latch lifts with a soft click. You feel more than hear. The door swings inward on quiet hinges, releasing a wash of warm air scented with wood smoke, old paper, and something else you cannot immediately name. A hint of dried peel, of long steeped herbs, of heat and patience. He steps aside to let you cross the threshold first. Inside, the light is gentler than it had seemed from outside. Lamps burn in glass-shaded sconces along the walls. Their flames turn low. The entry hall is long and high-ceilinged, floored in smooth, pale stone. A row of hooks lines one wall, some holding cloaks, others bearing wide-brimmed hats, scarves, and a single pair of gloves, with the fingers stained near the tips. To your left, an open doorway reveals a room lined with shelves. To your right, a passage leads deeper into the house, where you glimpse the edge of a staircase and the warm grain of polished wood. The door closes behind you with a soft thud. The wizard reaches past you and hangs his robe on a vacant hook, revealing a simple, dark tunic beneath, fastened at the neck with a small silver clasp. Without the robe, he looks somehow more ordinary and more completely himself. "Come," he says, "you left something here once. Best not keep it waiting any longer." He leads you through the doorway to the left. The room beyond is a study. Shelves climb the walls to the ceiling, filled with books, boxes, jars, rolled maps, and objects whose purpose you can only guess at. A large wooden table stands in the center, its surface scattered with papers and instruments. A brass armillary sphere turns slowly at one corner. An open window admits the cool night air and the distant hush of the forest. The wizard crosses the room to a narrow staircase tucked into the far wall, half hidden behind a tall bookcase. "Up here," he says. The stairs are steep but sturdy, their wooden steps worn smooth in the middle by years of passing feet. They turn tightly on themselves, carrying you upward through the dimness. The light from below fades. A new light takes its place, a pale, steady glow that seems to fall from somewhere above your head. You emerge into a small circular room beneath the peak of the house. Here, the ceiling curves low, following the line of the roof. A single wide window takes up most of one wall. Through it, you can see the edge of the forest, the clearing, and the distant hills washed in starlight. The room itself is sparsely furnished. A narrow bed stands under the window. A desk with a straight-backed chair occupies the opposite wall. On a small shelf beside it sit a few small objects: a river stone, a bundle of dried leaves, a tiny glass bottle holding a feather, and on the desk, placed squarely in the center, as if it is the most important thing in the room, lies a small brass telescope. It is no more than the length of your forearm, its casting scratched and dented, the brass dulled where fingers have gripped it often. The eyepiece is slightly out of alignment. A thin length of cord, frayed at one end, is tied clumsily around the middle. You know it at once. Memory rises up as a scene. You see your own smaller hands turning the brass tube, trying to twist the pieces together. You remember its weight at your side as you walk. You once stood at this window, lifting the telescope to see if the stars look different from here. You set it down on this desk, meaning to pick it up again before you left. You did not, until now. The wizard stands just inside the doorway, his head almost brushing the curve of the ceiling. His beard catches the light from the window, the white strands gleaming faintly. "You were shorter then," he observes mildly. "Could barely see over the sill." He nods toward the telescope. You meant to return for it. Most people do when they leave something behind here. The house keeps such things until they remember the way. He does not sound reproachful. If anything, there's a hint of satisfaction in his tone, as if a small, long-standing arrangement has finally been fulfilled. You step forward. Your hand closes around the brass tube. It is cool to the touch, heavier than it looks. The familiar scratches fitting beneath your fingers as neatly as if they have been placed there for that purpose. The frayed cord brushes your wrist. The wizard inclines his head as though acknowledging something that has passed from his keeping to yours. That's all, he says. The rest of it belongs downstairs. He turns, the top of his head nearly grazing the doorframe, and descends the narrow stairs without looking back. You follow, the telescope held carefully against your chest as you duck under the low lintel and step down into the study once more. From there, he leads you along the passage you glimpsed earlier, past the staircase that rises toward the other rooms of the house, and into a long, warm room that can only be a kitchen. Its ceiling is crossed with beams from which bunches of herbs hang to dry. A wide hearth occupies one wall, its fire banked low. Above it, a heavy black kettle hangs from an iron hook, steam curling from its spout. Shelves line the walls, crowded with jars and canisters. A wooden table stands at the center of the room, a single candle burning at one end. The wizard moves with calm certainty, as if following a sequence long practiced. He lifts the kettle from the hook and sets it on a trivet on the table. The steam that pours from its spout carries the scent of clean, hot water, a blank page waiting to be written upon. He selects a shallow clay bowl from a shelf, then reaches up to pinch a small measure of leaves from one bundle, a sliver of bark from another, and a few dried berries from a jar with a wax-sealed lid. Each ingredient falls into the bowl with the softest of sounds, a whisper of leaf, a faint tap of wood, a tiny rattle. He grinds them together with a short pestle, the motion slow and even, until a fragrant mixture rises up, something bright and green, underlaid by a deeper, comforting note. Satisfied, he spoons the mixture into a waiting teapot and pours the hot water over it. The liquid darkens almost at once, slowly spreading color through its depths. A curl of steam rises, catching the candlelight. He sets out 2 wide cups and fills them. The drink in each turns a clear, rich amber. The steam that rises is cool at first, then warm, with a hint of citrus and something like rain-soaked earth. The wizard slides 1 cup toward you. "It is a long way back from where you took the path," he says. "This is quicker." He picks up his own cup and drinks. You raise yours. The clay is warm against your fingers. The first sip is gentle, the taste spreading across your tongue in layers. Heat flows downward with each swallow, filling your chest and limbs with a gradual warmth. You drink again. The sounds of the kitchen, the crackle of the fire, the faint tick of a jar lid, the murmur of the house. They all begin to draw a little farther away, as if you are hearing them from below the surface of water. You finish the cup. The wizard's cup is nearly empty. He sets it down and looks at you with the same steady gaze. You will find your room as you left it, he says, with one small addition. He inclines his head. The candle flame bends as if a breeze had passed through the room. The shadows blur, their edges softening, the warmth in your limbs deepens. The next breath you take tastes different. The scents of herbs and wood smoke are gone. In their place comes the familiar smell of your own space. You open your eyes, and the ceiling above you is the one you know. The light in the room is the same you left behind. Your body lies where you last arranged it, the covers resting with their usual weight. For a moment, you might doubt that any of it has happened. Then your hand shifts against the sheet and strikes something cool and solid. You lift it. The small brass telescope lies in your palm, its casing scratched and dented in the familiar places, the thin cord coiled loosely around it. It gleams faintly in the light of your room. You turn it once slowly in your hand. The metal is cool under your fingers, then grows warmer where your skin rests against it, as if answering the warmth it has carried from the wizard's house. Outside, somewhere beyond the walls, the night goes on. Wind slides along the roof and curls past the windows, touching the glass with a soft, passing sigh. Somewhere, a branch brushes another, a quiet scrape that comes and goes. The world beyond your room keeps its distance, content to move at its own slow pace. Inside, the familiar shapes around you are unchanged. The line of the shelf, the curve of the chair, the small details that mark this place as yours. Nothing in them hints at forest paths, or stone houses, or distant hills. And in your hand, the telescope waits, finally back, where you have always meant it to be.